Hello. So, the first thing to note this evening is that thanks to someone at JetBrains, I figured out, or they figured out, what was causing my inability to format documents, which now works on a test project, and that was because there was a generated code file mask here saying tests were generated, which meant that the formatter would ignore them completely. So that's now fixed. Right, so to today's tasks. Yes, we're going to fill out some more of the HTTP API. We don't need to make new views for any of the gets yet. We should just be able to use a subproperty of some of our existing ones. So for this state endpoint, all we're actually going to be doing is returning the state property of a toggle. So we can just reuse stuff. So the first thing we'll do is add a method to the controller, and then we shall write some tests. And actually test drive it. So this is our standard get. In fact, let's implement a get of a single toggle first. That's probably more important, because then we can build on that to build the other ones. And hello, Terrific Taylor. So let's do our individual one. I actually have no idea what the routing syntax is, so this will be interesting. Async task, action result, get, and we'll do the ID based get to start with, I think. Will that make most sense? Yeah. Good ID. And I also want to make my REST responses have a links array in them, linking to things like self and to child states, but I don't want to hard code those into all of the results myself, so I thought we'd try and implement it with a decorator later on. So this is going to be a get single toggle, so we're going to need a new handler and a new request for this. Actually, let's first figure out what the routing is. Hopefully this will have a nice bit of tooltip text telling me what I need to do. Nope, right. I'm going to guess ID slash ID. Maybe? I think it's something like that. Oh well, we'll find out sooner or later. So we'll have a request. And that's going to be a new get, we'll just call it get toggle request. And that requires the ID to be passed into it. And we will get a response, which is await mediator send request. And that'll be of a useful type at some point. And then we'll return new JSON result of response.toggle. Right, now let's implement these things so we have less red, and then we can write some tests before we actually implement their logic. So if we go into our domain project and into handlers, we'll create a new class which will be our get toggle. Do we have the word request in it? No, it's just a get toggle handler, which will have next to it a public class get toggle request and a public class get toggle response. This itself has a toggle view property, toggle, and nothing else yet. And this had a constructor taking in a GUID of toggle ID. And then to make everything play nicely with mediator, we make this an I request, I think. Yes, an I request of get toggle response. And this becomes an I async request handler of get toggle request, get toggle response. And we'll use Resharper to implement everything. And we will add a constructor, and this will take in our data layer abstraction, so an I storage. Yeah, an I storage. No, don't change signature, add a field. And yeah, that should be everything to make it all compile. It will now throw errors when we do things, but that's fine. We want to write some tests first. Yeah, we'll write tests first. We'll worry about routing later, and also how we're going to test our routes. Oh, yes, sorry, I forgot presentation mode. There you go. That should be a bit easier to read for all of us. Now I don't have to get my head so close to the screen. Right, oh, and we're missing an HTTP GET on that. So at some point we're going to need to write some tests to prove that all our routes work, and that when we add new handlers we don't break existing routes. Because, while we could catch that by manual testing, I'd much rather have it caught earlier with an automated test. But for the time being, we'll just implement this particular logic. Part of the reason wanting to do route testing is I'm not certain if this handler shouldn't clash with the one above it. I don't think it will. Oh well, we'll find out. So, we'll go into our REST test project and toggles controller tests, which has our fake mediator and a real instance of the controller. And we have some existing tests. Yeah. I'm still considering changing the return types. Visit storage settings to create some space. No, it's alright, I'll worry about that later. Right, fact that when fetching a single toggle, at least it's not the antivirus shouting at me today. So we're going to say to our mediator that when any kind of get toggle request is received, we shall return a new get toggle response. Come to think about it, this isn't going to test the handler at all. This is going to test the controller, that's what we expect, which is fine. Yep. And then we'll say something along the lines of our model. So this is what we would be posting to that, or getting to that controller endpoint. In fact, we don't have a model, we just have a single parameter. So we'll have our var parameter, project a keyword? No, it doesn't. Equals GUID.new GUID. And then we'll say await controller, or we won't have IntelliType. Dot get parameter. Let's call it toggle ID actually. Ah, that's why it wasn't doing IntelliType. We need to actually have an async method. And now, if we... Okay, apparently my... that's weird. My mouse wheel has become inverted. That's really weird. Yes, so we now need to actually have a toggle with some results in it so we can prove that this works. So we'll do toggle equals new toggle view, and let's actually put that in its own variable. And this can all go on one line. And all we need to do here is say var response equals that. We'll cast it to a JSON response, I think. JSON result. Finish stuff. Not at the moment, thankfully. You wait until you see me trying to type things later on. At some point my muscle memory will go and I'll start typing weird characters everywhere where I'm trying to put brackets. So now we can just check that the value is should be the view's toggle property. No, it should be the view. Yes, it should be the view and not the response. So did I need that? No. Good. New good. Right, and see if that runs. Can you not just use a regular keyboard? Yes. So the laptop I'm typing on is a British English keyboard layout, which is fine. But I have a work laptop that came with a Finnish keyboard, and I have a work PC with a keyboard, and that is a Finnish keyboard. I've been thinking about taking an English keyboard to work that I have spare, but I might as well learn to type on a Finnish one if I'm living here. That way, if I have to use someone else's computer, I stand a chance of being able to type things without having to hunt where all the symbols have gone. No, I don't feel like I'm already carrying far too much stuff back and forth from work. Laptops, gym kit, that kind of thing. Right, so as we can't run it like that, we shall do... I've worked out why this is running out of storage space. I'm keeping all my recordings from this, I haven't moved them onto the server yet. Do .NET test source crispin.rest.tests crispin rest tests. Now this one should pass because it's not doing anything particularly special. We're just checking that the controller method returns the right thing. When we write some tests for the actual handler though, those should fail because that's throwing null reference exceptions everywhere. Yep. So if we now go in to our normal test project, wherever that's gone, down there. And we shall add a new test, which is get toggle handler tests. And that will have the handler equals new get toggle handler. And that takes in some storage, which will have a fake one. So our storage equals substitute for iStorage. That. And we shall also have the actual session equals substitute for iStorage session. I like that ordering, so I don't want to have to put that in the middle, but oh well. Storage dot begin session returns session. Right. Let's make a field for that. Read only, and a field for this. Also read only. Now we can write some tests. So our first test, when the requested toggle doesn't exist, and the other test is obviously when the requested toggle exists. And let's actually put requested there. So, how do we do this? Well, we'll have a toggle ID, and our test will be something like var result equals await handler dot handle, yep, handle a new get toggle request with that toggle ID. And this should be result dot toggle should be null, I guess. Don't want to throw an exception if you request a toggle that doesn't exist. We'll get null, and then the controller can decide what to do with that. Because then if we reuse this handler for, say, a RabbitMQ based interface or something, that can decide whether to send a message didn't exist callback or whatever. And our HTTP controller can decide that we'll return 404 record doesn't exist. But that's not down to the domain to determine, and that better than throwing an exception and then catching it just to return something. So this is roughly the same, or at least to start with. Now we'll say var results equals await handler dot handle new get toggle request toggle ID. Let's make this async. And this time we're actually going to have a toggle view. So var view equals new toggle view. Does that require any parameters? Nope. And the only thing we're going to bother setting on this is the ID, which we'll do this with, rather than having lots of extra variables all over the place. Oh, positive thing. And then we'll just do this, toggle ID. Now our results dot toggle should be the view. Yep, that'll do. So we now need to actually set these things up to work. This one should work as it stands, I guess. Don't think we need to do any setup for it. This one, however, we need to actually set up our session to do something. So session is going to have something requested of it. I think we'll use the projection for this. We could load the aggregate. But we need a view, not the actual toggle itself, so the projection makes most sense. So get all, all toggles returns new all toggles. The question is, can I just insert what I'm after into this? Close enough. So in fact, we'll delete this again. I don't really want to write an interface just so that I can do this faking on that toggle view. So what we'll do is have this. Okay, maybe not. Not enough selected. View. Now our view, if we just handle a single event, new toggle created, and this we can give our toggle ID to, give it a name and a description. Here we can pass in the toggle ID, and our assertion says the toggle that returned .id should be toggle ID. One of those is probably a good and one of those is probably a string. Oh, to help if I actually wrote an assertion. Right, so we're setting up a view, we're adding a single toggle to it, and we're making the session return that view. And then we are handling our message, which we're expecting to query for this view, get the toggle out of it, and return it here. Now this should fail because we're throwing a not implemented exception. If it passes, that means very weird things are happening. Let's just run those tests and see what happens. I think the first one, no, the first one will fail as well because it's not implemented exception. Yep, 2 failures. And if we look here, get toggles handler, get toggle handler. So let's actually implement it. So remove that, and we'll start off by doing using var session equals new, no, not new, storage.begin session. And this is not doing anything async yet, but we do need to return a task. So first of all, we'll get the view, session.load projection all toggles, and now we just need to get it from here, should it exist. Now we have an enumerable, so we can't look it up by key. If we end up having a lot of toggles in our system, then this will be not very efficient. But for the time being, we can implement it as first or default. If we end up with a huge number of toggles in the system, we would adjust our view to be a dictionary so that we could look toggles up directly by ID rather than doing this. Where the toggle ID is equal to the message. Pretty sure I put a toggle ID on this. Ah, I made it a private property by mistake. Encapsulate field. Yeah, that'll do. Yep. So message toggle ID. So var toggle, and we shall wrap that a bit. We'll call that T so that the variables don't clash, and then return task.fromResult toggle. Oh, no, not toggle. New response with toggle equal to toggle. And because we're using first or default, toggle will either be null or something. So we don't need multiple return statements anywhere. So we can now rerun the tests and fingers crossed they'll both pass. And assuming they both pass, we'll then be able to run our API, and that should work as well. Failures. Get toggle handler, line 24. Let's have a look at what's on line 24. I did tell it to return that, didn't I? No, I didn't set up that there. In fact, what we can do is move the view up here, and that, because the way we've got our storage implemented, the view will never be null. So we can do this. So we'll always return a view, and in this case we'll have put something into the view first. Now this means session is not accessed anywhere, so we can inline that. Yep. Yep, that should be good. See, this is why we write tests. If I'd actually run this in, I was manually running it to test it, then it would have taken a lot longer, because starting up an API and then sending an HTTP request and typing on the models and things not only takes longer, but also invites other areas of failure, like getting the root wrong, or typing the model wrong and thus not serializing it correctly and getting weird errors instead. So we will now do a manual test of it, just to check that we've got the root right. Then I think it would probably be a good idea to write the root tests, as I'm liable to break them before long. So we shall run that. And that. And the first thing we need to do is actually create a toggle. So toggles. We will post JSON with a name of T1. Let's see, call it toggle1, and a description. Of first. Yeah, that's right, I think. So I'll post that. 201 created. And you see we got a link here as well. And with luck, when we visit the second one of these, no, actually let's just do the first one. So we'll paste that in here. Change this to a get. And with luck, it won't work. Right, now I need to figure out why it didn't work. See, this is why I like writing tests, because my controller is clearly broken, but I don't know why yet. Where is my REST project? Toggles, toggle controller. Toggles, /ID, and an ID. So maybe I've got the routing syntax wrong. Write down and use Ruby Jekyll. I like Jekyll. It's nice. It's yeah. I used to self-host, and you do it myself via an FTP server, but GitHub pages much easier. Right. So I have a get method. It's got the right ID. Is it because I put a slash at the beginning and that's routing it to the, like putting the root at the beginning of the API? I don't know. Stop and rerun. I need to do our post again. So of course get a different ID back, because we don't have any persistent storage yet. Oh, server error this time. Post. Toggle. Right, I won't see your problem. Object reference not set to an instance of an object. What? That didn't change anything. Toggles controller line 44. Ah. Huh. There we go. So we'll need to write a test for that, I think. What do we do when the model is null? We return bad request, or we should do. So now that we have a response from that, where's my response header? And we have a URL. Let's paste that on there and do a get. There we go. So yeah, don't start your routing tags with a slash unless you want them to be at the start of the route, start of your URL even. So we got our toggle back. It has the right name, it's got the right description, it's got no tags, and it's got the state of anonymous. It's off for anonymous people. No users have any state set up, and no groups have any state set up. Great. That's our first one. Let's just check we've not got any bad white space grouping in. And before we go any further, let's split those into separate files. gonna have to check if there's a way I can default the contents of that box. No new line at end of file, or I'm not having that. There's one there. Request. Okay, that doesn't have one. And the response, that doesn't have one. Oops. I did recall having problems setting up Jekyll myself the first time. Honestly, I don't know how I have it running now. So long ago since I set it up on my laptop, yeah, no idea. I'm just thankful it works. I hate getting Ruby to run. Too many different versions of Rubies and libraries that support Windows and don't support Windows and support x86 and don't, and too much pain. So toggle controller, it's a toggles controller, implement get toggle by ID. Now, you think we'll write some routing tests, because the next thing I want to implement on the toggle controller is getting by name, which will have a similar route. So let's go to our rest tests, and here we shall do a class, route tests. Now I don't actually know how to do this with ASP.NET Core. What I want to do is host using the test framework, so in memory, no actual HTTP, no network cards involved. Which I guess will be similar to this. So we have an iWeb host called run on. Well, let's try doing that. Let's see what we get. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. What are you expecting? Can I just do no arguments? Yes. What? Is there anything about using in-memory? Use server? No. See what else we've got on this host interface. Default builder. Start. Well, let's just Google it. ASP.NET Core test host. Because there used to be a nice test host package. Oh, there is a core test host package. This might be what we're after. Now, is that really their website? Huh, it is. I was kind of hoping that would go to the project site and tell me how to run this thing, but never mind, we shall muddle through. So let's install that to our test package, our test project. There we go. That was version 2, wasn't it? Yep. Put it in the rest tests project. Now hopefully it'll be pretty much the same as the old one, where you could just do test host, and that will have a property for a client on it, and then we'll be able to run tests. So let's do test host manager factory. No, let's try test server, test app. No, let's just fully qualify Microsoft dot ASP.NET Core dot test host dot. What do we have in here? Test server. I tried typing that. Of course. New test server. And this now takes a builder. So if I could remember what that started with. Web host dot create default builder. And delete that. There. Do that. Maybe. Well, it will probably do something. Can we dispose host? Yes. Right, so the first thing we want to do is implement disposable on this class. It's not what I intended to happen. Implement missing members. Right, we shall make this a field. Make it read only. And then host.dispose. Right, so we might have a working host. Let's add a test and find out. When getting the API root as opposed to root. Good old English with the same pronunciations. So var response equals no. Using var client equals host dot create client dot get async / var response equals better await it, I suppose. And what can we do with the response? Is there a nice method to get headers as JSON? That's weird. I want the body as JSON. Content J reader string async. So should be. Now my API, I believe, returns hello world for the root. No, it returns Crispin API. So let's just assert that exists. We'll do var content equals await that content should be. Right. Now if we go back and find our rest test run. Oh, there it is. Now with luck, this should work. Unless, of course, I've set up the web host wrong, which is quite likely. I bet it's because that's still running. Maybe. The other weird thing I find about .NET Core is that I end up with many, many copies of the .NET exe running in the background, and I have no idea why. But as long as it doesn't lock DLLs, I don't mind. Oh, it worked. Oh, and we even got the test output as well, the log output even. Nice. So, we want to actually make useful routing tests out of this. So we'll leave that one in place for now. And now we want to test all of our routes. How best to do that? Well, our gets won't necessarily respond with the right thing, because we won't have any data in there. I suppose we could insert, like hit our create toggle endpoint, and then check all of the subsequent routes return the right things, or at least return 200 okay. Yeah, that'll do for a start. Toggle, when hitting the toggle controller. So we shall create a client again. This time we shall say var response equals await client dot post async to toggles, new string content, which will have something, some encoding UTF-8 and application JSON. And our content will be contemplating just actually serializing something rather than typing it manually, because then I'll have to escape all of the quotes. Actually, is there a new JSON content? No, oh well. Yeah, let's do var body equals JSON convert dot serialize object new name equals toggle 1 description equals first toggle. Right, so now we have some body, so I'll put that in there. If we end up posting a lot of things, I'll extract that into a helper method. But as it stands, that'll do. Now our response should satisfy all conditions. So the response itself, need a callback. Status code should be created. And response, now can I just get a header easily from this? I wonder if that makes things easier or harder. Headers. Can you not do that? Clearly not. I think its location should be new. Not that we can actually do should be, because it's going to return a new GUID. I can't predict the good. So instead we shall toString it and just say should start with toggles ID. Yeah, let's see if that works. I can't run in here, can I? Let's see if that works. Yes, it does. Good. I wonder if I can silence that output. I don't know. Maybe. I'll have to look into how to do that. So I won't want all of that output most of the time. So now that we can create something, what we can do is say, let's actually pull the location out like this. RV bar location. That can go up there. That can go back to being an expression. So now we can say client.getAsync to the location. Single toggle. We can also do var all toggles equals await client get async toggles. And all we really care about is that these both return OK. Oh, thank you, Handsome Malice. It's Rider's default dark theme. Or one of its default dark themes. It's got two. So all we'll do for this is just check that it has a success response. Is success status go should be true. And all single toggle is success should be true. Now I'm usually against tests doing multiple things, but these are being more of acceptance tests, proving that given a toggle we can fetch it by ID and fetch it by name. Yeah, the trouble with doing Windows customization is how much effort it takes. Yeah. I just tried to run the tests in Rider again, didn't I? Oh well, I'll do that. I spend all my time in Atom and Rider and a command prompt open anyway, so it's not like I see the desktop very often. I can't even remember what my desktop background is, actually. Let's find out. Can I just minimize that? I want to minimize everything. Oh well. Oh, I can do that. Can I? Thought there was a hovery thing. There we go. Oh yeah. Elliot's wallpaper from Mr. Robot. Right, so we now have some acceptance tests. Yeah, I didn't want to minimize everything because I've got a bunch of stuff on another window as well. No, in another monitor. So, tests add some routing acceptance tests. And later on we can also expand this to also cover our get by name one, which we're now going to implement. Now this one will be much... That's really annoying, right? This will be much faster to implement because we can reuse our get by. No, we can't reuse our get by ID handler. We'll need a new one. Yeah. So our toggles controller, where we've got this get by ID, we have basically the same thing. Actually, let's modify it so we can reuse it, because we're going to be using this one a lot throughout everything. So we'll have string name. This is a name root with a name parameter. And instead of an ID, we're passing in a name. Yes, I will stop streaming soon, and then I will clean up the disk. I made the mistake the first time I streamed of recording in MKV format, and it was like 2.5 gigabytes. Switched back to MP4, and it was like 200 megabytes. So if we go to this, we can now add public string toggle name. We'll do this equals null string toggle name equals null. And does that need to be a nullable property? I guess so. And we'll do initialize auto property toggle name. Yep. We'll make that nullable as well. Not sure if I like this actually. Oh well, we'll muddle through for now. So here we would change our expression. So we'd say var. Can we get away with using var? No. So func of toggle view. So no, you're running low on disk space. Stop telling me. Toggle bool. Because now Ryder's shouting at me as well. I must be really running low. I'll deal with that in a minute. Yeah, this equals message dot toggle ID has value. If that has a value, it will be view t dot ID equals message dot toggle ID dot value. Otherwise, it will be t. Oh, I need to give it a name. Filter equals t dot name equals message dot. Let's try not having syntax errors everywhere. That usually helps. Toggle name ordinal string compare. Was it compare or comparison that takes in? Alright. There's no explicit conversion between lambda. Yeah, I thought as much. The question is how long time based on your knowledge would it take to make a network that took you the start time X to do a couple of commands. Out. Doing print that Windows is specific. And make a network took you start for time X. Do a couple of commands in a graphic layout and also do an MTR. When done. Not long, I would have thought. Assuming you can work out the individual commands to do it. I'm not entirely sure what you're getting at. But yeah, you can do most things with scripts. I've got all kinds of weird scripts doing things that work for me, so yeah, it would probably be easier to do it in Bash than in Windows command prompt, but Actually, you mentioned Linux command, so yeah, it should be doable. How easy it is, I'm not sure, and I'm not sure about getting the content of a graphic window and saving that as a PNG. I'm not sure how you'd go about that. Toggle view. Cool. Wow, I can't delete that character. That's weird. Right. I suspect something has just run out of hard drive space completely. Excuse me 1 second while I try and work out where my hard drive space has gone. I'll get an Explorer open from this. There we go. Yes, I have literally run out of all space. I have 35 megabytes free. Let's delete that very large MQV file, that'll do. Right, that should have freed up a bit. 2 gig free, that'll do. We can continue. Although I've now lost my mouse. And we might need to exit Rider because everything has crashed. Right. Wow, I can't even get Rider to respond. Kill it. Right. Start. Crispin. In fact, while that's going, I'm just going to shift all those off. What's the date today? It's the 23rd, yeah. Cut. Media. Right. Well, that was a fun distraction. You know what, it might be a good idea to call it a night here. I've just seen the resource usage graph on my laptop as well. Everything's maxed out. Note to self, check you have free hard drive space before starting a stream. So yes, thanks for watching. Sorry this has been cut off a bit earlier than expected, but there we go. I'll push the code that we've already written up to GitHub, and if you've got any questions about what I've been writing or how or why or anything like that, feel free to send me a message on Twitch, or I guess a YouTube comment, or on Twitter. And my username is Ponderdom on everything. So yeah, you can find me everywhere. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'm gonna go and try and rescue my dying hard drive now.